Now be the big star state. That's because the Packers acquired All-Pro Micah Parsons from the Packers for Pro Bowl defensive tackle Kenny Clark and 2 first-round picks. Green Bay then took care of Parsons' contract issues with a 4-year, $188 million deal that has $136 million guaranteed, making the highest-paid non-QB in league history.
We have all sides of this story covered. There you can see Packers reporter Rob Demovsky is live in Green Bay. Cowboys reporter Todd Archer is with us from Dallas, and then Mina Kimes is here to help us understand what just happened and react to it all. Let's start with Rob, though, in Green Bay. And look, here we are, okay, 9 days away from the Packers home opener against the Lions. And Rob, how exactly did all of this with Micah Parsons come together for the Packers?
Shay, let's start with this. Multiple sources told me that Packers general manager Brian Windhorst thought this was a long shot at the very beginning. But he took the shot anyway. He went into Packers coach Matt LaFleur's office and said, "Would you want Micah Parsons?" And Matt LaFleur looked at him and said, "Well, of course I would." And they went to work on it. This was very complicated because it wasn't just a trade, but it was also a massive contract. But they kept working at it, and eventually they began to get the feeling that Jerry Jones might indeed part with them. The contract part of it might have been the last part done, but there's some history there with the agent, David Mulligetta. He also represents Jordan Love. Remember, they just did his contract last summer, and also All-Pro safety Xavier McKinney, also represented by David Mulligetta. So there was some history there, and it allowed them to get this deal done at the end of it.
Okay, well, many of us are not used to Green Bay making this kind of an impact this late in the offseason, a massive move, breaking the bank. What more can you share about this aggressive approach by Green Bay?
Well, remember the draft, which was here in Green Bay? Packers drafted Matthew Golden, receiver, in the first round, and they hadn't drafted a receiver in the first round since 2002. It was a massive storyline for years. Are they ever going to draft a first-round receiver? Brian Windhorst finally pulled the trigger this year. It was met with a massive ovation. If they set up that draft stage today and Micah Parsons walked on it, I'm sure it would be just the same response. But it goes back even a little bit further than that. On January 16th, 4 days after they lost to the Eagles in the playoff game, Brian Windhorst told us, "It's time we start competing for championships around here." So maybe that should have been our first clue that this offseason was going to be a little bit different.
My goodness. Well, he'll be tested early. Lions week 1 going to Lambeau, and then in a short week, you have the Commanders coming to Lambeau. Should be interesting to see what Micah Parsons can do there. You can read Rob's piece on ESPN.com detailing the Packers' aggressive front office approach. It's there right now. Rob Demovsky, thank you.
Thanks.
All right, let's continue the conversation with our Cowboys reporter, Todd Archer. And Todd, what are the football reasons for Jerry Jones and Dallas making this move with Micah Parsons?
Yeah, Jerry, the first answer that Jerry Jones gave in the press conference was about the run defense, and this makes the Cowboys a better team for the playoffs. Now, never mind the fact it might be more difficult to get to the playoffs without Micah Parsons, but there's some validity in what he said. In the Cowboys' last 3 playoff losses, to the Packers and twice to San Francisco, they allowed 403 yards rushing on the ground and 6 rushing touchdowns. So you can see where the Cowboys wanted to get better at stopping the run, and that's what they believe Kenny Clark can do with the guys that they have in the roster. And just for Kenny Clark, he left Green Bay at 7 a.m. this morning, arrived here at the Star around 9:45. He's on the practice field right now, and we should be able to talk to him after practice from inside the Ford Center.
Yeah, I'm sure plenty of people will have a lot to say about whether or not Micah Parsons removing him from that Cowboys team was the answer to that problem right there. However, how does this move exactly affect Dak Prescott and the offense?
Oh, there's always pressure on Dak Prescott, right? There's more pressure on him now, and as well as first-year head coach Brian Schottenheimer. They're going to have to score a lot of points. They believe they have the ability to have an explosive offense with CeeDee Lamb, with George Pickens, who they acquired from the Pittsburgh Steelers in the offseason. They like their running game with Javonte Williams, Miles Sanders, and the rookie Jaden Blue. They believe the offensive line will come along, but they must score points. They must get leads on teams because that's their recipe for success when you don't have a guy like Micah Parsons around to affect the other team's quarterback.
Yeah, plenty of pressure on this Cowboys squad going into this season. You can read more of Todd's reporting on the Parsons trade now at ESPN.com. Todd, thanks so much.
And now we bring in NFL analyst Mina Kimes to help me make sense of some of the things that maybe Jerry Jones said yesterday that I need a little bit of dissecting on. And so, Mina, I look to you to answer this question. Do you buy Jerry Jones selling that trading Parsons is actually better for the Cowboys in the playoffs?
I do not. Following his logic, if this was really about improving the run defense, candidly, Kenny Clark, who I think first-round pick from the likes of the Packers, and they could have spent it on a player like, I don't know, Tyreek Williams, who went to Detroit, for example, who's a run-stuffing defensive tackle. But perhaps more importantly not, they just traded one of the 3 best pass rushers in the entire NFL. Some would say the best. Over the last 3 years, Micah Parsons, first in pressure rate, first in pass rush wins, second most double-team player behind Myles Garrett. You don't trade players like that and get better. In fact, when he has not been on the field, our colleague Bill Barnwell has pointed this out, the Cowboys have been the worst defense statistically in football. So nothing about this makes sense for the short term. You could make a case for the long term, but in my mind, that's entirely speculative, especially because I think those Packers draft picks aren't going to be particularly valuable, given how good I think Green Bay is going to be.
Mina, when you have players coming out of the draft, we say things like, hopefully they become the next Micah Parsons. That's the kind of language that we use around here, right? And so now let's flip this over to the Packers side of things. Is Parsons the missing piece for Jordan Love and the Packers to take the next step?
I think so. This Packers team was already really good. They were the only team in the NFL to finish top 5 in offensive yards per play and defensive yards per play. And that defense, I thought, really took a step last year under their new defensive coordinator, Jeff Hafley. They were top 5 in a number of metrics, but one area where they still struggled was getting pressure, 26th in pass rush win. Micah Parsons, as I mentioned earlier, leads all edge rushers in pass rush win. So they addressed what I think was the biggest issue on their roster, which was the absence of a superstar edge rusher. But not only did they address it, they went out and got, again, one of the best pass rushers in the entire NFL. So I love them adding a closer on that side of the ball. Very excited about Matthew Golden, who Rob talked about in the first round. I think this Packers team is going to be incredibly formidable.
Micah on one side and Rashawn Gary on the other. Oh my goodness, the NFC North doesn't know what's coming. Mina, we're going to talk to you a little bit, a lot more on this trade out. Get up and first take.
From the time that Jerry Jones felt he had a handshake agreement in March till yesterday, there were exactly zero discussions of a new contract. The topic never was broached. Jerry Jones felt like he had an agreement for $40.5 million a year. With the pass rushing market exploding,
this will go down as one of the worst trades in the history of their football team and their organization. They traded away a future Hall of Famer for what likely will be the 28th to the 32nd pick in the first round.
You don't deal away a 26-year-old superstar player on the cusp of the season. If you're going to make this move, and you guys have already said, you make this move in March, when you can literally open up the floodgates to all their teams. If someone wants to, give you, a king's ransom, that's the time to do it.
This is a disaster for Jerry Jones. This is a bad situation. And I think this is something that's going to taint whatever legacy he hoped to have, because